The hungry silence. The baby's wail tore through the timber walls like a blade. John Calder pressed the child against his shoulder, rocking, shushing, but the sound only grew sharper, more desperate. The lantern on the table sputtered, casting long shadows that clung to the rafters like ghosts. A pot sat cold on the stove, empty of milk. John's hands trembled as he dipped a rag into the last of the water bucket, pressing the wet cloth to the baby's lips. The child sucked, choked, then screamed again, body jerking with need. John cursed under his breath, low and broken. His eyes drifted toward the cradle in the corner, where once a soft voice had sung lullabies. That voice was gone now, buried beneath the dry earth outside. The boards of the old ranch house groaned with the night wind. Coyotes yipped far out on the plain, thin and hungry. The clock on the mantel ticked loud, every second stretching like a noose rope. John's chest ached with helplessness. He could mend a fence, shoe a horse, draw water from the deepest well, but he could not conjure milk for his child. The crying rose higher, raw and wild. John closed his eyes, pressing the infant tight to his chest. "Hush, now hush." His voice cracked like brittle wood. The baby's tiny fists pounded against him, demanding life he could not give. Then, 3 knocks. Sharp, sudden, wooden thunder against the door. John's head snapped up. The baby fell silent for a breath, startled by the sound. Then the wailing resumed, louder still, echoing in the hollow house. Another knock. John rose stiffly, one arm around the child, the other hand reaching for the rifle propped against the wall. His thumb brushed the hammer, heart pounding in his ears. Nobody came calling this far out at night, not unless trouble was saddled with them. The wind moaned through the cracks, carrying dust across the floorboards. John set the rifles but against his hip and moved slow toward the door. A third knock. Not hurried, not afraid. Firm, like someone who expected to be answered. John drew in a ragged breath and swung the door open. There she stood. A woman, framed by moonlight, travel cloak draped over her shoulders, dust on her boots. Her face was shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but her eyes caught the lantern glow, steady, watchful, unblinking. She carried no saddlebag, no horse tethered outside, only herself. And in her arms, wrapped in cloth, she bore something John had not seen in weeks, bottles. A small pail, and something else, an aura he could not name, half comfort, half danger. The baby screamed again, louder now, writhing in John's grip. The woman's voice was low, smooth as river stone. "Let me in." John hesitated, rifle heavy in his hand. Her eyes never wavered, calm against his suspicion. Then the baby coughed, choked, and John felt his own resolve shatter like glass. He stepped aside. She entered without a word, boots striking the boards soft but certain. The smell of the trail clung to her, leather, dust, faint smoke. She set her bundle on the table, unwrapping cloth to reveal bottles sealed with wax, a small sack of oats, and a tin of dried beans. But her gaze fixed only on the baby. "Give him here," she said. John froze, rifle still at his side. The child wailed, shrill and cutting. His arms ached from holding the tiny, furious weight. He saw his wife's face in the corner of the room, remembered her last whispered words, the fever that had taken her. His chest locked. "Give him here," the woman repeated, softer now. Her hands reached out, steady as stone. John's grip loosened. With a breath that trembled through him, he placed the child into her arms. And the wailing stopped. The baby latched against her with a sound both pitiful and desperate, sucking like life itself had returned. John felt his knees weaken, his rifle lowering until its barrel kissed the floor. He pressed a hand to his face, unable to stop the wet heat in his eyes. The woman rocked gently, eyes distant, unreadable. She whispered something too quiet to catch. The lantern flickered, painting her features, strong jaw, lined from hardship, but softened now by the act of holding new life. The house grew still. Only the sound of the child feeding filled the silence. Minutes passed. John lowered himself into the chair by the table, head bowed. His rough hands clenched, opened, clenched again as though searching for something to hold. At last he rasped, "Who are you?" The woman's gaze lifted, steady and sharp. "Clara May," she said simply. Her name settled in the air like dust. John nodded once, slow. His throat burned with questions. Why she'd come, how she'd known, what she carried in those eyes that seemed older than her years. But the baby suckled on, softer now, calmer. And the questions died in his mouth. Clara shifted, patting the child's back, her movements practiced, certain. She glanced around the room. Empty shelves, cold hearth, rifle leaning neglected. She saw the worn cradle in the corner and the quilt folded at its foot, untouched since death fell on the house. "You've been alone too long," she said, not unkindly. John's jaw tightened. "Ain't much choice." Her eyes held his, quiet but fierce. "There's always choice." Silence stretched. The clock ticked on. The coyotes yipped again, farther now. Clara rose, still holding the baby. She moved to the cradle, laying the child down with a gentleness that felt like memory. The infant stirred, then settled, cheeks damp, breath steep. Clara turned back to John. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, yet filled the room. "You can't do this alone. Not anymore." John studied her, the curve of her shoulders beneath the cloak, the stillness in her stance. Something about her presence struck deep, like a shadow from another life, carrying secrets the desert had buried but not killed. The lantern flared, then dimmed, throwing her face half in darkness, half in light. And the storyteller's voice drifts over the scene. They say the wind carried her that night, or maybe it was fate itself. Some folks reckon she weren't just passing through. No, sir. She was sent to a hungry house where grief had left a man hollow, and where one babe cried loud enough for heaven to hear. And that night, when Clara May knocked, the silence of death gave way to the sound of life again. Whispers of the past. The hammer struck iron, and sparks lit the blacksmith shop. John stood at the counter with oats in one hand and a sack of beans in the other. His shoulders bore the dust of the trail, but his eyes kept cutting toward the door, anxious to be done. Behind him, whispers stirred. "Widow woman out there at Calder's place. Rides in after dark, no wagon, no horse. Don't smell right." The words were low, but sharp enough to bite. John's jaw clenched. He set coin on the counter, heavy and loud, then gathered his supplies. He didn't answer the talk, though his ears burned as if the words were brands. Outside, the sun beat down hard on the main road, shimmering heat rising from packed dirt. Wagons rattled, a dog barked, and the saloon doors slapped open, spilling laughter like sour whiskey. But the voices followed John even there. Calder's got company. Strange kind of company. A group of riders leaned against the hitch rail, dust on their boots and mean in their eyes. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his cheek, grinned slow when John passed. Clayton Briggs. Well now, Briggs drawled, spitting tobacco to the dirt. "If it ain't the lonely rancher. Heard you got yourself a guest." John kept walking. "Rude," Briggs chuckled. His men laughed with him, sharp as crows on a fence line. "Don't worry, Calder. We'll come pay our respects." The words followed John all the way out of town. By the time he reached the ranch, the sun was sinking. Shadows stretched long across the plain. Smoke from the chimney told him Clara had kept the fire going. He rode in slow, eyes scanning the ridges. The land felt watched. At the porch, Clara stood waiting. No apron, no softness, just stillness, her hands folded in front of her. The baby's faint cry came from inside, thin but steady. "They're talking," John said flatly. Clara's eyes flicked toward him. "About me." He nodded once. "They'll come," she said, her voice certain, not afraid. John set the sack of beans down hard on the porch boards. "What is it you're hiding?" His voice cracked from the weight of suspicion and fear. Clara's gaze didn't flinch. The wind tugged at her cloak, lifting dust around her boots. "I hide nothing," she said, "but I've done things that make men whisper." The baby cried louder, pulling John's eyes to the open door. He stepped inside, leaving Clara alone on the porch. But her words clung to him like burrs. That night, the wind howled through the eaves, rattling the shutters. John sat by the fire, the rifle across his knees. Clara moved in the dim light, rocking the child, her face unreadable. At last, John broke the silence. "Why are you here?" Clara looked down at the infant in her arms. Her hand brushed across his cheek, tender as rain. "I was passing through," she said, "but I heard him crying." John's knuckles whitened on the rifle. Plenty of women have passed through. None stopped to walk into a man's house in the dead of night. Clara lifted her eyes to him then, and he saw it, the steel beneath the calm. "You've lost," she said, "and you don't know how to hold on. That boy would have died. I couldn't walk past death, not again." Her voice broke on the last word, though her face stayed hard. The fire popped. Shadows twisted along the log walls. John swallowed the lump in his throat. He wanted to ask what again meant, but something in her expression stopped him. It was the look of someone who had seen too much already, who carried graves inside her. Outside, a horse neighed, restless. John froze, hand tightening on the rifle. Clara moved to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to peer out. Moonlight glinted on riders. 3 of them, circling slow, just beyond the fence line. Clara's voice was quiet, steady. "Briggs." The baby stirred at the tension, letting out a sharp wail. John rose, rifle ready, heart hammering, but the riders didn't come closer. They lingered, then turned their horses and melted back into the dark. Clara dropped the curtain, eyes narrowed. "They're testing." John's breath came rough. "Testing for what?" "For fear," she said. Sleep didn't come easy. The house felt smaller than it had ever been, walls too thin against the emptiness outside. Every hoofbeat in the distance felt close. Every howl of coyote carried threat. John lay awake on his cot, staring at the rafters. He heard the babies breathing soft in the cradle, heard Clara's slow steps on the porch, the boards creaking under her boots as she watched the dark. The old storyteller's voice drifts through the night. And so it was that whispers carried faster than any horse, stirring trouble toward Calder's ranch. But trouble's only half the tale. The other half sat in that house, in the shape of a woman with a past no man dared speak plain. They said her eyes weren't the eyes of a wandering widow. No, they was eyes of someone who'd seen war. The gathering storm. The match flared, lighting John's hands as he struck it against the post. The flame shook, then caught the lantern wick. In its glow, Clara's face appeared, calm, watchful, eyes fixed on the door. Outside, hooves pounded. Riders. John's pulse thundered. He lifted the rifle, barrel trembling. Clara didn't move. The hoofbeat slowed, circling. Then a voice rang out, low and mocking. "Calder, Clayton Briggs, come out and meet your neighbors. We're tired of knocking." John swallowed hard. His finger twitched against the trigger. Clara stepped closer, laying a hand on the barrel. Her grip was steady, firm. She shook her head once. The baby cried from the cradle, sharp and thin. The sound carried through the open cracks of the ranch walls. The riders laughed. Briggs called again. "Fine boy you got. Shame if something happened to him." John's throat burned. He started forward, but Clara's hand held him still. She looked at him, her eyes dark fire. Then she turned and opened the door. The night air swept in, carrying the smell of horse and sweat. Moonlight gleamed on gunmetal. 3 riders waiting, rifles in hand. Clara stepped onto the porch, her cloak stirring in the wind. "You're trespassing," she said. Briggs leaned in his saddle, teeth glinting in the pale light. "And you're a long way from where you belong." His men laughed. One spat in the dust. Another raised his rifle half an inch. Clara's hand rested at her side, calm as still water. "Leave," she said. Briggs smirked. "Or what?" The air tightened, sharp as wire. John's knuckles went wide around the rifle, just inside the door. But Clara didn't flinch. Her voice was quiet even. "You'll find out." For a long breath, no one moved. Then Briggs barked a laugh. He wheeled his horse and spat in the dirt. "Tomorrow night," he said, "we'll burn you out." The riders turned, hooves pounding into the dark until silence swallowed the plain again. Clara stepped back inside, shutting the door behind her. Her face was shadow and fire. "They won't stop," John whispered. "No," Clara answered. He stared at her, chest heaving. "Then what do we do?" Clara's eyes met his, steady as stone. You learn. By dawn, the sound of gunfire cracked across the back pasture. John's rifle bucked against his shoulder, shot going wide into the dirt. Again, Clara said. He cursed under his breath, worked the lever, fired again. The can on the fence didn't move. Clara's hand shot out, steadying the barrel. She pressed close, voice low but sharp. Breathe. Don't fight it. Let it break, then let it go. John sucked air through his teeth. Aim, fired. The can toppled. Clara nodded once. Again, hour after hour, the shots rang. Sweat poured down John's back. His arms ached, but Clara kept him firing, loading, firing again. When the sun dropped, they moved inside. She laid pistols on the table, polished and worn, their grips smooth with age. John stared at them, throat tight. Yours? He asked. Her hands stilled. Once. The fire popped in the hearth. For a moment, silence pressed heavy. Then Clara picked up a revolver, spun the cylinder, and set it back down. These don't forgive mistakes. Learn their weight. John reached out, slow. His fingers closed around the iron, and the chill of it crawled up his arm. Nights came heavy. The baby cried, slept, cried again. John drilled through exhaustion, rifle and pistol, his arms shaking, his aim truer each day. Clara stood over him like stone, offering no praise, only correction. One night, when the moon rode high, John found her outside, sitting on the porch with a revolver across her lap. You've done this before, he said. Her eyes stayed on the horizon. Too many times. Why'd you stop? She didn't answer. The silence stretched until John thought she wouldn't. Then her voice came low, ragged. I left too many graves behind me. Thought I could outrun him. She looked down at the gun in her hands. But graves don't stay buried. Her eyes lifted to his, sharp as flint. Now you know why they're afraid of me. The lantern light caught her face, and John saw it clear, the truth in her eyes. Not a wanderer, not just a widow, a gunfighter, one who'd walked away from killing but never left it behind. The baby's cry cut through the moment, pulling them both back. Clara rose, holstering the revolver. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, you'll need it. The storyteller's voice falls soft across the scene. So it was that the rancher learned at the hand of a woman whose past was written in lead and blood. And folks whisper still, how she stood unflinching before the men who circled like wolves, and how she sharpened Calder into steel. For the storm was gathering, sure as sunrise, and no prayer was going to keep it from breaking. The legend of Clara May. Hooves thundered against the earth, a storm of dust rising with the dawn. John stood in the yard, rifle in his hands, sweat running cold down his back. The baby's cry echoed from the house. Smoke from the chimney rose thin against a sky burning orange. Clara walked past him, calm as stone, revolver at her hip. Her cloak shifted in the wind, revealing the steel beneath. She stepped into the yard, her boots sinking into dust as Briggs and his men reined up at the fence. Briggs grinned wide, eyes cruel. Told you we'd be back. His riders fanned out, rifles gleaming, horses restless. The air hummed with tension like a string stretched too tight. Clara's hand hovered near her revolver. You've had your chance, she said. Briggs laughed, spitting into the dirt. A woman and a broken rancher standing against me? You should have run. John raised his rifle, arm steady now, breath slow the way Clara taught him. The barrel leveled at Briggs's chest. The riders shifted uneasily. Briggs sneered. Don't bluff me, Calder. You ain't got the sand. Then the baby's cry pierced the air, shrill and desperate. Every man's head turned for half a second. That was all Clara needed. Her revolver cleared leather with a speed that blurred, thunder cracking in the morning air. The first rider toppled backward, rifle falling useless to the dirt. Briggs shouted, Get him! Gunfire erupted. John's rifle slammed into his shoulder, the shot kicking dust from the boots of the second rider. Clara moved like shadow and fire. Each step measured, each shot true. She cut through the chaos with calm precision, eyes cold, jaw set. Horses screamed, men shouted, bullets tore splinters from the porch. John fired again and again, hearing Clara's voice in his mind breathe. Break! Let go! His aim held. One rider fell. Another swerved and fled. But Briggs pressed forward, revolver blazing. A round tore past John's ear, another punched through the fence post by his shoulder. He ducked, heart hammering, chambering another round. Clara stepped into the open, her cloak falling away. Sunlight caught her face, hard and unyielding. She fired once, twice, two more riders hit the dirt. The yard fell quiet, but for Briggs, circling, eyes burning with fury. Smoke curled from his pistol, dust clung to his sweat-slick face. "You," he snarled. "I know you." Clara's revolver hung at her side, barrel smoking. Her voice was low, steady. "Then you know how this ends." Briggs spat, rage twisting his features. "They said you were dead." "Not yet," Clara answered. Silence stretched, the whole plane holding its breath. The sun climbed higher, crow calling once in the distance. Briggs swung down from his horse, boots crunching against the dirt. His hand hovered over his pistol, eyes locked on Clara. John's throat tightened. He gripped the rifle, but Clara's voice cut sharp. "No," she said, without looking at him. "This one's mine." Briggs sneered, fingers twitching. "Let's see if the legends still got teeth." The world narrowed to two figures 10 paces apart. Wind tugged at the dust. The baby's cry fell silent inside the house. Briggs moved first, his hand blurred toward his pistol. Clara's gun was already rising. 2 shots cracked as one. Dust leapt from the ground. Briggs staggered, eyes wide, pistol falling from his hand. He dropped to his knees, clutching his chest, blood seeping between his fingers. Clara lowered her revolver, smoke curling from the barrel. Her face showed no triumph, no joy, only the weight of what she had carried all her life. Briggs choked once, then fell face first into the dirt. Silence followed, broken only by the wind. John exhaled, his rifle lowering. His arms trembled, but his aim had held, his shots had landed. Clara holstered her revolver, turning toward the porch. She lifted the baby from the cradle, holding him close. The child's small hand clutched her cloak, eyes wide but quiet now. John stepped forward, words caught in his throat. "Stay," he managed. Clara's gaze lingered on him, soft for the first time. Then she shook her head. "My trail don't end here," she said. She pressed the baby into John's arms. His chest ached as he took the child, the warmth of new life against his heart. Clara's hand lingered on the boy's cheek a moment, then fell away. Without another word, she stepped from the porch, boots carrying her toward the horizon. Her figure grew smaller, swallowed by dust and distance, until only the memory of her remained. The old storyteller's voice drifts over the silence. And so she vanished like smoke on the wind. But the tale of that morning lived on. Some say the earth itself held its breath when Clara may faced down Briggs. Some say her hand was faster than death, her aim truer than judgment. Others whisper she weren't no woman at all, but a ghost sent to guard a child too young to fight for himself. Whatever she was, they called her the ghost of the frontier, and her name rode the wind long after her boots left that valley behind.